Hi, welcome to episode 3 of Jon Schaffer Finally Free, my reaction commentary. In this section, we will be hearing Jon talking about how he came to Christ in his adult life, and it's not all of it, so this will be, even though it's episode 3, it'll be part 1 of that story. And he'll talk about what led him down that way and how themes of Christianity and religion permeated in existing Ice Storm songs, which if you're a fan, you already know that. In my commentary, I am going to probably upset some of you, not because I am pro-atheist or pro-Christian or pro-anything. It will be coming from a guy who grew up in the Christian church and who is not a fan of modern interpretations of Christianity. The, how do I put this? The mere Christianity, the shack, that sort of realigning Christianity to be a better fit in the current zeitgeist, where it's more about spirituality and they abandon a term like Christianity and adopt a term like Christ follower. So I grew up in the church. The church was a very huge part of my life and my upbringing, and I still do have an immense respect for it. Though I am not a practicing Christian, it's the church's effect on how I carry myself in everyday life is still there. So it will sound like I'm coming down on the pastor or on Jon, but actually what I will be critiquing is the ideas and the philosophies of the current church. So I hope you stick with me. I hope it doesn't offend you too much, because it's never my intention to offend. It's my intention to give perspective and maybe challenge your own perspective. And if you disagree with me, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to challenge mine. Hope you enjoy. Let's get on with it. Episode 3 of Jon Schaffer, Finally Free.
Through the years have led to this, this awakening, and it's global. I mean, obviously I'm an American, so I'm concerned about my country first and foremost, and I'm a father, and that's the reason that I'm concerned. Yeah. I don't know if I would have ever been as angry as I was if I didn't have a child. I don't know if I would have cared as much. It changes you when you're a father,
Absolutely.
It's, and even though I was far from a perfect father, my career made that difficult. My attitude made that difficult to be a perfect father. I don't even know if one exists, but the fact is, my rebellion from, I was baptized over at the Presbyterian Church in Edinburgh when I was a baby. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any say-so, but so I was a Christian. I grew up around a Christian environment, and I went to the problem was I went to a religious school.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. And that's a big part of my story, the formative years, and my parents going through the divorce, and there was a lot of heavy stuff, and a lot of people go through a lot worse stuff. So It's not about that, but I'm actually a pretty sensitive guy in a different way. I became very hard because the way that I had to survive, especially the early days of the band, in Tampa and street life and stuff like that. It changes you. But I have this sort of an empathy that is, I feel the injustice. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say the pain of the world, but I hate it. Like when I see the people starving in Africa or India or whatever, these poverty, or when, the first time I went to Brazil, we're going through Sao Paulo, and we think we have ghettos here, man. and it just went on for miles. I've never seen anything like it. Like, it's just so brutal, and it really bothers me because it was later that I started to put it together. It doesn't have to be this way. These are crimes. These are criminals running everything, because this isn't necessary. You know, I mean, so I'm going off on a tangent, but it's a big.
Sorry, go ahead.
The big thing for my disconnect was my anger at religion and rebellion against God. But religion is not it's not the truth of God. It's a system. It's a system of control in many ways and deception. And I was not separating that. So when you're talking about seeing
Except for the one
loose
he's
change
aligned
and
with now.
seeing the evil.
Except for the one he's aligned with now. And I want to get something across to you, too. I'm not slamming anybody who believes. If you believe, fine. And if that works for you, great. I will say this, though, especially to non-believers. A non-believer doesn't believe there's a God, and they don't believe there's a devil. However, if you look at popular music, and you look at Travis Scott and Beyonce, you look at pop music and hip-hop music, the stuff that's really spectacular. I mean, Beyonce wears a Baphomet ring. She uses a lot of satanic imagery, as well as other hip-hop and pop artists do. All the stuff that used to be thrown onto heavy metal back in the 80s is up front and in your face in modern-day pop music. And there's the idea of a cabal of people, of elites, who believe in Satan. Here's what I think they miss. Simply because you don't believe it doesn't mean that they don't believe it. Simply because you believe it to not be real doesn't mean they don't believe it to be real. And that would be fine, just the same thing with Christianity, if they weren't in power and using it to push laws and restrictions and declarations on the masses. Therein lies the problem. Christianity, Satanism, my God, Judaism, with Trump entertaining the idea of making laws against American citizens who question Israel and the Jewish religion, making anti-Semitism a crime. That, whether it doesn't matter how you feel about God or Yahweh or Satan, if those in power make it important, it becomes important to you. So no matter what John believes, whether it was God, he was railing against God, he never became an atheist, but he was also a quiet Christian. If there's enough people who believe in something, no matter how nonsensical it is, it can become powerful enough to infect and really mess up your life. So much for don't tread on me, right?
Even seeing the evil, even with that knowledge, I still wasn't totally connecting it to the spiritual war.
Yeah.
I was outraged by it and full of righteous indignation. I mean, really angry at the corruption and the tyranny and the stuff that's going on all the time. But it wasn't until, and this is why I feel like the January 6th event was a blessing in the big picture. It was brutal to get through, but it was a blessing because it brought me to Christ, and it was a series of steps that I realized this is evil. It's not like a horror movie or a death metal band or whatever. That's not evil. That's like kindergarten stuff compared to evil. You know, it's nothing. And being in that, and realizing I don't know. I guess it started. I don't know how to put this in words. It's so
Yeah,
crazy.
no, I want to go back and not to cut you off,
No, that's
but I
fine.
want to go back and talk about this journey now. So I know you said that you were raised in, we'll call it. I hate how Christianity has become just such a term that we use. So I guess like I don't know, it's not very direct as a description. Christianity can
Interchangeable.
A lot of people can just translate conservative over to Christian, or I just want to create, I don't know, more of a hard line between, like, when we're talking Christian here, we're talking about Christ follower. So going back,
Oh my
you were
God.
raised like in a religious.
Oh my God. I live in the South. That term Christ follower is so annoying. It is a way for people to have this self-righteous attitude about, well, I don't go to church and I stay away from religious dogma and stuff like that. I'm not a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. Shut the f up. Jesus Christ. Christ follower is a cop-out. Accept the fact that if you're a Christian and you engage in any sort of biblical prophecy and take your marching orders from the Bible, that's Christianity. Christianity, you follow the Christos, the Christ, and you're not following every other Christ. You're not following John Christ from Danzig. You're following Jesus Christ. Christianity, that is what you are. Quit with the Christ follower bullshit. That being said, Christianity, like autism and sex toys, has a spectrum. You can dictate that you're a Christian. Let people think what they think. They're going to think what they think anyway. Well, I'm a Christian, but I'm not that kind of Christian. You know, I don't do this and we don't engage in this. Shut the fuck up. Just shut up. Just say you're a Christian. When I came up in the church, it was never told to us to go out and hassle people about our Christianity. It is, you live a good life, you show yourself to be a good person, and it would make people interested in how are you living that way. I live through Christ. That's it. I follow Christ. You're a Christ follower? No, I'm a Christian. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the guy who wrote those books, they talked about these apostles who walked around with Jesus. They're Christ followers, literally following the cat. If you came into the game late and you never met the boss, you're a Christian. That's the way it works. Sorry to go off on a tangent. The Christ follower, annoying. Freaking annoying.
Christian here, we're talking about Christ follower. So going back, you're raised like in a religious home. You went to Lutheran school, and I feel like that is a lot of people have. I went to a Christian high school, and I know people that were raised in Christian homes, and just because they were around Christianity, they thought. I'm not saying that you're saying this at all. I'm just trying to make it clear for everybody that they thought that they were Christian because they were raised Christian.
No,
yeah, you know what I mean.
Exactly.
Versus like relationship. I just wanted to
100%.
let people know that there is a distinction between being a Christ follower and what the world knows as a Christian. I know a lot of times people just can take conservative and say like, oh, they're being Christian, or it's America, you're a Christian nation, or hey, you're raised to be not just conservative but have good morals. And a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I'm raised Christian, almost like an ethnicity.
Yeah.
Whereas
like
the journey
Judaism
that you're talking about is, like you said, it was a progression. You had to make that relationship with Christ on an individual level.
Yeah.
And then once, obviously, we'll talk about it, but you had this build up and you made this individual relationship with Christ, and on this whole journey, it's almost like the veil's being taken off. Not to put words in your mouth, but I experienced the same thing in my life. You have this veil being taken off where you see the evil for what it is. You see the spiritual warfare that's going on. It's no longer, like you said, you're playing dark and light here. We have a real world war that's happening around. And on this,
Spiritual warfare, 2 Corinthians, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God and through the pulling down of strongholds. That whole thing. But it's the idea, cast down imaginations of every high thing that dare exalt itself against the knowledge of God and bring into captivity all to the obedience of Christ. Spiritual warfare, 2 Corinthians, it talks about that we are not at war with flesh, but with spirit. That being said, that is the Christian perspective on that, but anyone can see it. You can see it through the zeitgeist. You don't have to be a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or a Scientologist to see that there is a battle for the spirit of the people. And it goes back to what I said before. It's not about a God and a devil. Whoever the elites worship, that's who they're going to push on the people. There is an entertainment elite that obviously falls towards the dark. And now you have a political elite that are so Christian that they want to make anti-Semitism against the law, even questioning Judaism. But it doesn't have to be either which way. You can see that the United States is in a fallen state, not for a lack of God, not for a lack of Christianity, but for a lack of morals. And if you want to go to Christianity for your morals, you're screwed. That's where they pull this Christ follower bullshit. Well, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Christ follower. So what does that mean? Do you use the Bible? If you use the Bible, well, the Bible, if you follow the tenets of the Bible, you'd be in jail according to man's laws. It is about, honestly, evolutionary directives that we've kind of figured out. Take care of children, protect women, reciprocity, to treat people the way we want to be treated, which has this do unto others has been around since before Christianity. It's mentioned in a different way on the Sermon on the Mount, but it still holds true that to treat others the way you want to treat yourself. But making it a religious issue is utterly ridiculous. John says that people are tired of being lied to. He believes that people are smart enough to figure it out. So you don't need that control.
This journey, I know a lot of people are church hurt, and I know that's a term that's used a lot
Church
in
hurt.
churches, particularly because we're the ones that do the hurting. But I know religion is something that man created, whereas a relationship with Christ is what he's after. Religion, that's something that people can monetize. That's something that people can corrupt, and that's not what a relationship is. It's more of it's just putting bureaucracy into the church and
Dogma.
The church does such a bad job of shooting itself in the foot with hurting their youth, and I think some people do it intentionally, and I think a lot of people do it just out of indifference, or I'm not even sure what it is, but it puts such a bad taste in people's mouths for it. Going back to, like I said, I went to a Christian high school, and I know kids that they were fine during high school, but only because mom and dad made them, and they went to a Christian high school, and as soon as they didn't have to go to church, and as soon as they didn't have to go to that Christian school, they never went back, because that relationship wasn't their own. It was something that mom and dad made them put on for Monday through Friday, and then again on Sunday, but that was...
Rumspringa. When an Amish kid can leave the fold, go out into the real world, most of them actually return. Well, if mom and dad are making you do something, that's one thing. What mom and dad, and he's talking about, are failing at is not having it be a part of their lives. That whole BS of do as I say, but not as I do. That was a big thing growing up. I would see that from multiple parents. Your mom tells you not to smoke while she's smoking. Your dad tells you not to drink while he's drinking. It's ridiculous. The reason it works with the Amish so well is because they live by the laws and the rules that they give themselves. Whereas in Christianity and really, honestly, Western religions, because You don't really see it that much in Eastern religions, but in Western religions, in Western religion being Christianity in all its facets, you see that a lot because there's an inherent hypocrisy to Christianity. Again, why they want to disassociate themselves from the word Christianity and go with Christ's follower. It's just utterly ridiculous.
It wasn't a relationship at that point.
Right.
So,
It's a big difference.
yeah.
And
Sorry to go off on that tangent.
No,
but I just
no,
feel like, yeah.
that's good because it's hard. I don't want to. I think in a lot of ways the church, which can you can take all of the different denominations and whatever and
Yeah.
put them into a category where we've kind of been our own worst enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think it's just more of the layers of evil because I feel like these big denominations have been captured and probably for a lot longer than we realize,
Yeah.
and it's just not Christ-centered enough, and that's
Mm-hmm.
I'm a baby Christian. I'm still learning, and I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just the way it happened for me, the way the veils started
Yeah. coming
coming off, and when I was knee deep in this and in the middle of it, with COVID, I mean, it started to feel different. Like it was a whole nother level. But I still wasn't there. I wasn't even there until, I mean, even after I got baptized, like a year and a half after I got baptized, when I was from my pastor down in Florida, and Gene was there to witness my baptism. And I was looking for churches. I had terrible PTSD after I got out, had a big falling out with my daughter, and hurt her and hurt me and my family.
That's a thing too. I'm quote unquote friends with some ex-Diced Earth members, and for the most part, they're all kind of differing degrees of Christians. That being said, if Jon was gonna do something musically, get back together with John Greeley. I mean, when he left, when Iced Earth Mark II with John Greeley on vocals, Night of the Storm Rider, Greeley's still a badass singer. So, I mean, no matter who you get with, anybody other than Stu, in my opinion, it's just my opinion because I think Stu is a rat, but that's neither here nor there. John Greeley, I would love to hear some more stuff with Greeley. I with Matt's career, I highly doubt, unless Iced Earth become just a studio band, which is possible. Matt could sing on that. I mean, John and Matt's sister got divorced right before January 20th. I think it was back in 2019. And so, yeah, I'd like to, I don't think we're going to get anything that resembles what Iced Earth was. Because even like Sons of Liberty, it was a different monster. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I liked it, but I wasn't the biggest fan of it. Demons and Wizards, which was a completely different monster. I don't think we're going to hear Iced Earth the way we're used to hearing Iced Earth, but I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know. This is just one guy's reaction to this. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to do some Christian music, talk to John Greeley. Gene Adams sounds great. He sounded great on the Purgatory EP, but I would like to hear Greeley as well.
And I knew that I needed help at that point. Like I started reading scripture when I was locked up. Mm-hmm. It was the only book I could get, and it took weeks after the request for me to even get it. And so I started, and I had one guard.
At least he didn't become a Muslim.
County, who was obviously a good soul. He slid Daniel and the Lion's Den literature under my door, and he said, "Stay strong, man. Hang in there," And so that obviously meant a lot when you're in that situation. Any any shred of humanity that shows you some support is a big deal. But and I started reading, but it was like even, and I was getting there, and I was realizing, but it took for me to, even a year and a half after my baptism and accepting Christ as my Lord and Savior and being on my knees and knowing that I was lost and that we are absolutely in a fallen state and all of the things that this is evil. This is real. Okay, this isn't a game. It's not a joke. This is good versus evil. That's what's happening. And knowing that, but I still had this, like, early on, I started to get I've realized that in my life, I have been longing. There was an empty hole inside of me, and I was filling it with work and tours and albums and collections of things and all of these things that when Christ came in, it was full.
Yeah.
And you can't. It's hard to describe that feeling.
He also has,
when you've lived your entire life
he's also married and has a child. And apparently that didn't do it.
with that hole.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it's hard to describe that feeling when you've lived your entire life with that hole.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do. And if there's anything that I hope and pray that will come out of this is that Jesus Christ is real, and it's powerful, and it is the heaviest story ever told. It's the heaviest thing that you could ever wrap your head around, his life and his death and his resurrection.
Want to guess what the
There is
next concept
nothing
album is going to be?
Nothing. And once the Spirit is in you, it's full, and that emptiness goes away, and that
No one finds Jesus on prom night. I heard that a long time ago. No one finds Jesus on prom night. It's never, things are going great. This all has to do with God, unless you're already indoctrinated in it. Like I said, these Jesus, the prom night thing, it's always at somebody's lowest end, where they lose faith in themselves and they lose kind of faith in everything, that they kind of gravitate towards this. Now, again, if you're a believer, you totally buy this. Whether it's Jesus, God, Yahweh, L. Ron Hubbard, you buy this. There also but you take yourself out of the equation where you get to a point and you decide, this is as far as I'm going, and I'm going to bring myself up. They don't want to give themselves any credit with that. It's somebody gets shot and they were like, well, Jesus, kept me from dying. It had nothing to do with the doctors or the paramedics or the police or rescue. No, it was God. God gets all of it. It's utterly ridiculous to me. I'm not a religious person. If it works for you, that's fine. But the amount of cognitive dissonance you have to engage in, the surrender of critical thinking, it's just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. And he had this hole he couldn't fill. He couldn't fill it with music, couldn't fill it with being creative, with a beautiful wife, with children. None of that. It was Jesus. What does that say about his family? About his attitude towards his family? Not just John, anybody who thinks this way. I've talked to people who say they claim they love Jesus more than they love their own children. If you're a Christian, apparently that makes sense to you. I can't make it make sense. I can't imagine placing anyone above my wife and my daughter and my granddaughter. It doesn't enter the equation. There's not even a second, third, fourth, or fifth place. Those three women take up the top 100. So, I don't know. Try not to get off on a religious tangent. my apologies. We should continue on. Just deal with iced earth on iced earth, right?
And then that was like a level of this. And then I realized another level. I'm sitting here reading Christ's teachings, and
4
I
books.
am not forgiving my parents.
4 books.
I'm still
By the way.
holding on. So that was another revelation. Like, I've got to forgive my mom and dad. I've held on to that my whole life, that anger. They were born in a fallen state too. Mm-hmm. They were born beautiful, innocent babies in a fallen state. Mm-hmm. And their hearts were hardened and they were scarred, and we keep doing this and we keep doing this. And it just there was one day not that long ago that I realized I had to forgive my dad and my mom. I went to my dad's grave, I prayed and I forgave him, and then I called my mom, and that was the biggest move, because that was really where the issue was.
Yeah.
And it just was like another level, of waking and obviously I'm emotional about it, but it's a big deal, and I want people that are lost out there, and there's a lot of them, and the system feeds it, wants it. It wants them that way. Mm-hmm. And I just want them to know there's a way out, and it's going to be amazing if you find it. If you're just going to be like, it doesn't matter where you live or what language you speak or what your
kind of matters what language you
religion is.
speak. It does matter
There's
what religion your
real
country is.
And true consequences in a relationship with Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's not unfortunately because of the evil.
The evil.
That gets lost. And the church has not done a great job at
The
getting
evil.
that out there, and that intimacy of what it's like to really be in a relationship with Christ, because it will change your life, and it will be it's an amazing kind of feeling of freedom and security and peace. Does that mean I'm, I still don't, I can't stand the injustice, but I know that I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
The only thing I can do is what I'm going to do going forward, which I don't know what that's going to look like yet, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Christ is in the driver's seat. I was a control
Oh,
freak
good God.
my whole life. My career, schedules, planning, goals, all of it. This detail on the cover, this detail in the mix, whatever.
That is a way to take responsibility off yourself. Christ is in the driver's seat. I have no responsibility. I am a passenger. Christ, take the wheel. Which way am I heading? Has nothing to do with me, everything to do with Christ. Well, if Christ is in the driver's seat, how at the end of time, when you stand before God and you have to stand before his judgment, how do you answer to that? Well, I thought you were in control. What do you mean I have to account for my actions? You're in control, Christ. Christ is at the wheel. Christ is in the driver's seat. He is dictating where I'm going. I have no say-so in this. Anything that happens, I shirk responsibility because Christ is in the driver's seat. Christians are going to be in an uproar because that's not what it means. That's exactly what it means. It is detachment from responsibility. Christ is doing this. Christ is responsible for everything good, not responsible for anything bad. Ridiculous.
That's
Yeah.